I think that is the main reason I became an actor.
Dhanush Bhan told you didn't find it funny when you were shooting it?
No, I frankly, I still don't. Everybody got work, except me.
And I just want to say that you've been my Mehboob studio.
I'll tell you a little story about the first time I came to Bombay. I was 16 years old. I had run away from home. That's another long story which you can read about in my memoirs if you're interested. And there were these friends who hosted me. And I got off at Bombay Central. I was 16 years old. It's 1966. We took the local train to Bandra, and they had put me up in a bungalow on Mount Mary. So we drove past, when we were coming out of Bandra station, got into a cab to go to Mount Mary. And on the way, my friend said, "There's Mehboob studio." And I turned around and I saw the emblem. It was much emptier then. The studio really stood out. My heart jumped to 48 frames per second, you know. When I saw this place, I saw the outside, because I'd seen Mehboob's films, and I still think he's one of our greatest filmmakers. And I lived a walking distance away, and I would walk up and down, just going past. I never dared even approach the Darwan because there was no question of being let in. And today here I am. So I guess being called a legend and so on, which, you know, I still find it hard to get my head around.
I want to share my little story with Sir. So it's been about 10 years since I have the great fortune to be around you. And I just want to say that you've been my Mehboob studio. It's the first time I saw him, I was rehearsing for a play at the Tata Theatre with Ratna as my co-actor in it. And I was on stage, and it was one of the worst technical rehearsals we could ever had. And it was an empty auditorium. There was supposed to be nobody in the house, except there was a white halo that was coming through. The silhouette of Naseeruddin Shah sitting alone in the auditorium judging you was the worst sight I could have had in my life. And since then, I've made many mistakes.
It's very difficult to watch a play alone, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's okay to
Especially
watch a
bad
movie
act-
alone,
very
but
badly
watching a
acted.
play alone is torture. Particularly if you're not liking it, you know.
So my first question to you, without further ado, is why acting?
For me, personally, because it gave me a sense of self-worth. I wasn't good at anything when I was a child. And to make matters worse, I had two brothers, elder brothers. And as all of you who are the youngest sibling would know, the youngest brother is no good for God, man, or beast. And both these brothers were outstanding in their own ways. One was the brains, and the other was the hero, the cat, the champion athlete, and the guy with the girlfriend, and so on. And I was the idiot who wasn't good at anything. Until I discovered my fondness for poetry and my fondness for drama. And this happened when I was about 12 or 13. I think I'd memorized the whole of Julius Caesar when I was 13 years old. I still remember every word of it. We were taught it in class. I would recite it to myself all the time, and it was just great bliss. I would imitate actors I'd seen in movies or actors I'd seen in plays and so on. And most importantly, and people don't believe this, but it's really true, there is an ailment. It's an ailment called onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia means that you are impelled. The symptoms of onomatopoeia are that you feel impelled to speak a line or a verse or a word or anything that you've heard or read somewhere for no reason other than for the joy of saying it. I think that is the main reason I I became an actor because I enjoyed speaking things, rehearsed things. I'm not very good at starting conversations with strangers, but I do love reading aloud, and I do love reciting. And perhaps that is what drove me to it. Then having come into it, I found I can do a psychology analysis of it and give you many intellectual reasons, but I think that is really why I chose to be an actor and not try to join the army or become an engineer. Also because I couldn't be bothered to study.
Was there
It was my mistake, though, to believe that becoming an actor involves dumping studies. This.
And so going from a young actor who's, as you said, imitating other actors, watching Kendall Saab on stage, but there were also a lot of other actors who were still doing a lot of Parsi theatre kind of acting. Were you, as a young actor before you went into NSD, was there a change when you went into NSD? Was there a mannered acting that you subscribed to earlier? Did that change because of NSD, or you always stood out among your peers as a more felt actor, so to say?
No, I wouldn't say that. A lot of the acting in NSD productions was pretty terrible too, you know. And I kind of knew from an early age which is the kind of acting I liked and which I didn't. I loved a film like The Wizard of Oz, but hated a film called Udan Khatola, which I saw at the same time, more or less the same age. Why I loved a film called Scaramouche and did not like a Hindi equivalent of it, the swashbuckling stuff. I was able many years later to define why. And that is why my somewhat snobbish aversion to most of Hindi cinema. Because, we're still remaking Hollywood movies made 80 years ago. We're still remaking them. I just don't understand it, and there is really no justification for it as far as I am concerned. But I realized that there's just a quality of finesse, there's a quality of excellence in these movies which our films didn't have for a very long time. We are moving closer to it, there's no doubt about it. But even then, later, now of course, I have come to the conclusion that a good performance is one which communicates the content well. It has nothing to do with how many voices you can change or how many expressions you can put on or how beautifully you move on the stage or anything of the sort. It has to do with how well you can get across. In order to get across, you need a set of several skills which you have to train. It's not just that easy to say, I'm trying to get across. No, there are techniques for getting across. And in my mind, simplicity is the best one. And I'll tell you a beautiful little story about two actors in the No theatre, the Japanese No theatre, which is an extremely stylized, very formal kind of theatre which is performed in temples, where everything is codified. All the gestures, all the expressions, all the emotions are codified. There is a gesture for sadness, there is a gesture for despair, there is a gesture for anger, etc., etc. There is a gesture for pointing at the moon. Pointing at the moon. Now there were two actors, one of whom, when he appeared and performed this gesture, the audience gasped because he was so graceful and so light and so beautiful to look at and so expressive and so technically proficient that when he performed the gesture, the audience gasped. There was another actor who had none of these qualities. But when he pointed at the moon, the audience saw the moon. People, but then, you got to pick up anything from wherever you can, I suppose. To those of you who want to become actors, let me warn you, you're not going to find anybody in your life who's going to help you learn. You may find a sugar daddy who will give you a plum part, but you won't find anybody who will help you learn. Your parents too don't really care whether you become a good actor or not. They only care that you earn your bread. Whether you want to be a good actor or not is entirely up to you. And there's nobody around who's going to teach you. So learn. As Dubeji used to say, acting is learnt. It's not taught.
You got Nishant pretty early into your career. You were right out of FTI. Were you still in the final year?
I was still studying it.
You're still studying there. And Nishant gave you instant success in terms of people already knew you.
No, it didn't. I didn't get a single offer.
But like there are so many people who spoke about you and Nishant, and
Sure, they spoke about me, but they didn't offer me any work.
how was that to deal with?
Oh, it was very hurtful because I knew I'd done well. I still consider it one of my better performances in cinema because it meant a lot to me. I knew if I messed this up, I was finished. And so I did my best, and it was a wonderful part. And I think I did pretty well. Every actor in Nishant got work after that. Shabana was already a star. It heightened her star status. Smita became the most desirable thing on the Hindi screen. Amrish Puri became this big villain. Girish Karnad started singing songs in Hindi movies. Yeah, which he now denied, but he did. Mohan Agashe, Kulbhushan Kharbanda, Savita Bajaj, everybody got work except me. I got nothing. And I was pretty shaken, but I consoled myself with the thought that, theek hai, those who are not giving me work now are going to regret it someday.
And then came Par. Did Par kind of changed the course for you?
No, it was Manthan really.
Okay.
Manthan was the next film I did after Nishant. And I started getting work then, but then by then Shyam was into his stride and he was already planning Bhumika and Junoon, so he told me you're going to be in these. So the kind of the police officers and doctors, maine injection de diya hai kind of roles, which I was being offered, I managed to turn them down. Had I got them earlier, I might have had to do them, But now I didn't, because I had Shyam's movies to look forward to. Then Girish made a movie called Godhuli. But it was Manthan which was such a success, surprisingly, that brought some recognition and a bit of money. And then after Junoon, I think the popular filmmakers saw my work and started casting me as the hysterical, angry rebel.
Then came a time when you became the face of what's called the parallel cinema. I thought it was a very interesting phase where a lot of indie films were being made right back to back. Shyam Benegal became an institute, almost a repertory of his own. You were playing so many different characters in so many different films. Sometimes you were the main character, sometimes you were the antagonist, sometimes you were playing a bit part like in Mandi, which is one of my favorite performances of you. I think you were tremendous as Tumrus. Have you guys seen Mandi? Those who haven't seen it's a fantastic film and sir is absolutely brilliant in it. You were playing so many different parts in such quick succession. For all the learning that you had, were you going instinctively into these roles? What was the process of preparing for such diverse films that were so rooted in reality, with parts which were sometimes very, aggressive and probably heroic, and sometimes parts like Tumrus, which were he was harmless and he was beautiful. How did you go about marking those characters? Did you spend a lot of time on them separately? How did you go about it?
I always take time over preparing a part. In fact, it's something I warn young actors about when I work with them. Not to set their performances too early. Not to decide exactly what they're going to do right away. A lot of actors complain that in cinema you don't get time to prepare. I don't buy that argument at all, because the longest shot that you can ever do will be how long? 5 minutes? How long do you need to prepare for a 5-minute performance? An hour? Okay, if you're preparing for a 2-hour performance, I grant you a month, but you're preparing a 5-second reaction or a 10-second reaction or a 2-minute dialogue. How much time do you need to prepare for that? Yet, you'll find actors will sit around and gas in between shots instead of working on the lines, even if they have two sentences to speak. So I'm very cautious about this, and I make sure that I'm never unprepared, and I believe firmly that nervousness in actors is caused by lack of preparation and nothing else.
How does one prepare for Jaane Bhi Do Yaaron?
Cool.
How many of you have seen Jaane Bhi Do Yaaron?
I'm sure everybody has.
I think one of the greatest absurd films made in this country. Did you know that you were making something as good?
No, but we rehearsed a great deal because there was so much spoken that we, Kundan also felt the need, right? For at least 15 days, all the actors assembled and we would read the script. And a lot of people believe that that film was mostly ad-libbed. It wasn't. It was all written. The only person who ad-libbed and who was very good at it was Naseer Shah. I'm not good at ad-libbing, and so I didn't try. Ravi Baswani and I got along wonderfully well. We've been friends for a very long time. So it was easy, very easy working with him. I despaired for the film while we were making it. I felt it wouldn't ever get completed.
But did you find it funny when you were making it?
No, I didn't. I didn't find anything funny.
Even when you read it for the 15
When I read it, I did.
Yeah.
But while performing it, no.
Do you think that worked for the film?
Possibly. Because if you find yourself funny, then I think the audience is not going to find you funny. You'll be laughing at your own jokes. The one scene that I thought was really funny while we were shooting it was the coffin scene with Satish and Om.
Right.
Because I was there holding back the hundreds of people who were assembling and saying, "Kaun hai, kya hai, kaun hero kaun hai, kaun si shooting ho rahi hai?" So we tell them documentary. And so if you look carefully, you'll just see the... Yeah, because if you said hero kaun hai, मैं कहता हूँ, अच्छा, तू hero है?
You could have said Satish hero.
तो crowd को क्यों संभाल रहा है? I could have pointed out Satish. But even Satish wasn't well known those days.
Right.
Yeah, this was before his great TV things. Om nobody knew, me nobody knew. And the others, of course, were even less known than we were. But while shooting that scene, while telling people, yeah, please, I thought that was a really hilarious scene, the way Om and Satish were going at it. But nothing else in the film.
Really, the end, the Mahabharata at the end.
Yeah.
The legendary Mahabharata at the end.
Yeah.
Dhanush Baan told you didn't find it funny when you were shooting it?
No, I frankly, I still don't. It's a homage to the Marx Brothers, A Night at the Opera. And if you see the last scene of A Night at the Opera, I'm afraid the scene Jaane Bhi Do Yaaron doesn't stand. Right? Yeah.
So how was it to go from, and I'll word my question very carefully from here, how was it to go from being the face of, realism to being India's first item boy at Oye Oye?
There were a hell of a lot of failures before Oye Oye happened,
Right.
And that is why people assume that I jumped, the wagon and jumped on to the other wagon with Tridev. Tridev was not the first singing, dancing movie I did. There were plenty before that. No one knows of them. No one has seen them, thank God. But they were all complete failures. The film I did immediately after Junoon was a thing called Sunaina, made by Rajshri Productions, a remake of Charlie Chaplin's City Lights, where I sang and danced and made a complete ass of myself. And there were several others after that. And then it was with Tridev becoming such a success. Why, I still can't understand. But it did. It helped my career immensely. Gave me a lease of 10 years or so. But it was then that people suddenly started getting uncomfortable about the fact that I'm criticizing the art movies that I'm doing. They didn't notice the fact that I continued doing them, though I may have been criticizing them. The problem is in my head. I don't think I've ever been good in a commercial movie. Not for lack of trying. Sometimes I tried too hard. And at other times I didn't try at all. But I just could not. You have to accept the reality of those movies. And you have to have affection for them. And unfortunately, I could do neither. And thus I really don't think I succeeded, or the parts I played succeeded in any of those movies, except for some strange reason in Tridev and in Mohra, where I played the heavy.
So when you look back at all those films, and I'm coming closer to your career towards 2000s, did you start changing as an actor? Did the industry around you or the experiences around you start changing the core, or did you remain pretty much the same? How were you able to balance that out for you?
It did bother me that in the better commercial movies I'm not considered. But it didn't kill me, because there was several other interesting things I was doing, either in the alternate cinema or in the theatre, or performing abroad or things like that. So I have to admit that I did want to be a popular hero. No one, anybody who becomes an actor wants to be popular. Any actor who denies that is lying. And so I did try, and I admit I failed. But that thought doesn't kill me, because I hadn't set everything in store, by my success in commercial Hindi cinema. I didn't ever imagine I'd become a huge star. I just imagined I'd be able to earn my living. And luckily I've been able to do a little more than that.
How does an actor do a riyaz, especially when they don't have a part to look forward to, when they're waiting between parts? How do you go about doing your daily riyaz as an actor?
That is something which an actor has to identify early in life, as to what are the essential tools that he possesses. And whether he's short or tall or dark or fair or good looking or not is of no consequence. What are the tools that you're going to need as an actor? You start with the body, and the second most important thing is the voice, or an equally important thing is the voice. In fact, the two go together. So I'm often asked this question. A dancer has a discipline that they can follow, so does a singer, so does a painter, so does, there are set rules. There are none for an actor. If you try reading Stanislavski's books, you will fall asleep by the 5th page. Yes. So what does an actor do? He's got to learn from life, and he's got to work on the tools he has. It is an actor's responsibility to stay physically fit and alert. He can't go around explaining to the audience, I wasn't well that day. And the second thing that he has is his voice. These are the two things that are under his control, which he can do something about. Actors don't. They go through their lives complaining that I don't have a good voice. They don't bother to do anything about the voice. And the third thing that is under his control is his sense of observation and imagination. You learn from life. The most interesting thing I've found to watch in life is how people behave with each other.